YouTubers, friends, loved ones, all ye who gather. Hope everybody's having a good Saturday. Mine has been intermittent. Hopefully I'll be on the upswing here. Having a little frog morton on the cellar, resting on top of about 3/4 of a bowl of Elizabethan mixture, Dunhill. We'll see what happens. I saw a video a few days ago by Mr. Specialist Piper, who specializes in nothing. And his opinion is just that. You should check his channel out. I know I've mentioned him before. He does cigar reviews, tobacco reviews, general rambles. Talks about all kinds of good stuff. In his last video, I noticed he was wearing a hat. Caught my eye. Those kinds of hats usually do. And, I asked him about it, and he replied in the affirmative that he was indeed a screaming eagle, among other things. It's the cheapest tamper I've ever come across right here. Took me about 5 minutes. Anyway, Specialist Piper, being a screaming eagle, for those of you that don't know, that means he served with the 101st Airborne. And, I thought that was pretty cool. I collect military challenge coins. The reason I started collecting them was I was interested in them, and for one thing, and the other reason was I was going to use them as a history lesson for my kids. They're given to troops by commanding officers, superiors, for various reasons. And sometimes maybe no reason at all. I'm really not sure, but anyway, what they're used for is to identify with your unit, for one thing. A lot of times they use them as if they're in a bar or something like that and somebody throws one up on the counter, either the last person to do so, or if someone gets caught out without theirs, they have to buy the drinks. I'm sure there's quite a few other rituals that they're used with, but anyway, the reason I collect them is for personal enjoyment and the history behind them. The ones I collect don't really come from the units themselves. They're made by a number of companies and people. And anyway, so when he started, or when I saw his hat, it made me think of one of mine. I went and dug it out. 101st Airborne. And on the back, this is Rendezvous with Destiny. Some of the campaigns and things they fought in. Right down there at the bottom, it says Currahee, which isn't technically correct for this particular coin. It was specific to a certain unit. I believe it was the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, I believe. I may be mistaken. 505th, maybe. Those are the guys you think of when you see Band of Brothers. That was the unit that was featured through a lot of that. But, anyway, when I dug that one out, I saw another one. And it means a lot to me as well. I just finished reading a book by A gentleman named E.B. Sledge. It's called With the Old Breed at Okinawa and Peleliu. Peleliu was a little island or atoll in the middle of the Pacific near the Philippines. It was basically a big hunk of coral that stuck up out of the water. That's just about all that was there, coral. And during World War II, we landed there, and hell ensued for those guys on both sides. The book that this guy wrote dealt with the campaign at Peleliu, and then after that they made their way up to Okinawa, which was different, but no different in a lot of ways. Both of them were hellish places to be. Peleliu was about 115 degrees every day with no relief, no fresh water, no shelter. They slept on the coral. They couldn't bury their dead. They couldn't cover their mess up. They couldn't do anything. It was a big rock. And it took quite a few weeks to secure that island at great cost to several divisions, several different companies and things. The one that he served with was K-35, that's K Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. And they had also served at Guadalcanal and forgot the name of the other island. I'll remember it at some point in this video. But they had been through hell before they ever got to Peleliu, and then they went through it again. That's when Sledge joined them. And his book deals with not the history, not the battles, not the command, opinions, anything like that. It deals with a private first-class perspective of being on the ground in that situation. And it's one of the most tense, horrifying kind of books I've ever read. I read a lot of military history, and this one was unlike any I've ever read. It deals with his fears, with his, everything he was going through. And after he got off that island, they recuperated, if you want to call it that, for a very short while. Then they went up to Okinawa, which was a much bigger island in a much cooler climate with a lot more rain. And it basically turned into a mud hole the whole time they were there. Again, no shelter other than the holes they dug in the ground. Ponchos, couldn't change their shoes or socks for weeks, months. They suffered through all kinds of crap. They finally made it off the island. And the guys that made it off the island at Peleliu in his unit, there were 26 of them. 6 of them, of those 26, had been injured. Those 26 were the only ones remaining that stormed the beaches at Peleliu. There were over 230, I think, 250 that did that. So you can see how it took its toll on them. Peleliu and Okinawa together, we lost several thousand men to death and injury. I think it's something like 6,000 total. And the Japanese lost a whole lot more than that because they were unwilling to surrender anything. They fought to the last man. There were just a handful that were captured, and a whole lot of civilians on Okinawa died as well. Not a good situation. Anyway, the challenge coin that I saw that reminded me of that, he was one of the very few people in his unit that did not earn one of these. And that's the Purple Heart. And the back of it shows all 5 branches of the service. There were people in Sledge's outfit. Once they got out of that, they were injured, whatever, they rotated back to the States, and they were out of the Marines, a few of them, and life was so difficult for them that they rejoined and shipped back overseas, knowing what they were going back into. But they did it because the people that they served with were the only people that they felt they could identify with, or that understood them, or knew what they were going through. You talk about dedication to people, to want to go back into that. They must have had some pretty strong feelings. And he quoted part of a poem in that book, and I went and looked that poem up. It was written by a man named Siegfried Sassoon. He was a British soldier in World War I. He fought trench warfare in Europe and experienced the hell that was. And he experienced the same kind of thing that a lot of Sledge's outfit experienced upon returning from the war. And when the guys from World War II came back, and World War I, they were widely regarded as, heroes, and given parades and all kinds of stuff. Quite a bit different than, say, the guys that came back from Vietnam. And while that's a good thing that they were looked at with reverence and respect and honor, sometimes it didn't feel that way to them. And Mr. Sassoon wrote this poem. I'm going to read it to you. It's short. It says, "I knew a simple soldier boy who grinned at life in empty joy, slept soundly through the lonesome dark, and whistled early with the lark. In winter trenches, cowed and glum, with crumps and lice and lack of rum, he put a bullet through his brain, and no one spoke of him again. You smug-faced crowds with kindling eye, who cheer when soldier lads walk by, sneak home and pray you'll never know the hell where youth and laughter go." I know there's a lot of people that serve that went through some things that those who didn't serve will never ever understand, no matter how it's explained to them, or what they read, or what they think. And my understanding is a lot of them feel that way. Not to say they're not appreciative of people who thank them and things like that, but at the same time they have that feeling like you have no idea what you're thanking me for. You think you're thanking me for something, and you may be, but it has nothing to do with what I did, or what I saw, or what I went through, what I lived through, what my buddies died through. And that's a terrible thing, to live with those kind of thoughts. I know everybody has problems. I have problems. You have problems. To compare them is a losing proposition. What may be the biggest problem in the world to me is absolutely nothing to someone else, and vice versa. Nobody knows what I go through, no matter what it is, and I don't have any idea what somebody else goes through. We may experience the exact same things, but how we experience them are probably never the same. No two people. So I don't really have any thought behind that, or I hadn't thought about it until just now. But, when you meet people or see people that may be struggling with something, be sympathetic, be empathetic if you are, if you can, if you've gone through the same kinds of things, but also understand that you don't have a clue what they're really going through, and probably never will, even if they tell you. I mean, I read that book. Every little detail that he spoke of, I could probably, if I had a desire to, go back and memorize passages from it and tell people exactly what he went through. But I'll never know what it's like to try to sleep with tracers flying 2 feet above your head, in a mud hole, in a torrential downpour, with decaying bodies 10 feet out in front of you, hundreds of them, the stench, the smell, maggots, lice, no water, trench foot, mental anguish that you couldn't possibly comprehend. I can read about it, I can understand it, but I'll never know what it is. Anyway, on that cheerful note, thank you to the specialist for being willing to stand up, put the boots on, and serve. I know there's quite a few of you out there that served. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I don't know what it means to you, but what it means to me is my freedoms. That may be a selfish way to look at it, but it's all I've got. So I hope you guys have a good Saturday. Hopefully this video won't get eaten by my phone. 5 minutes of the last one disappeared, the good part. So I'll speak to you guys soon. Have a good day.